Hello, everybody. We're here today to talk about the metaverse. Hi, everybody. Welcome today. We're here with Don Shafer. Don's a senior IEEE lifetime member. He's also an investor and mentor at the Entrepreneur's Capital Factory, and he's the founder, director, and a technical fellow at Athens Group Holdings, LLC. Don wrote his first real program in Algol in 1967 as an undergraduate at the United States Air Force Academy, and he built a MITS Altair to complete his graduate work at the University of Denver in 1976. Don still writes code when necessary, and I have to say personally, Don is a technology polymath. He's one of the smartest people I know that I've been lucky to meet in my career, and we're very lucky to have him with us today to talk about the metaverse and hopefully in the future talk about other topics. Don, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Michael. I appreciate it. And I don't know how much of a polymath I really am, but I will try to live up to that.
Well, Don, let's get started with a real simple question. First of all, what is the metaverse? I mean, we hear a lot about, we've all known about augmented reality, virtual reality for many years now. Is the metaverse just a kind of a marketing ploy to rebrand this, or is it qualitatively different in some way? How is it different? How is it the same? Maybe you could just help clue us into that.
Sure. Let me go back a little bit to kind of the what metaverse really means and where it came from. For any of the science fiction aficionados out there, the name was coined metaverse as a combination of meta and universe in a novel called Snow Crash that Neil Stephenson published in 1992. It's actually an excellent novel, but it talks about this area that is a metaverse. And it is a model for a number of the things that we already have today on the internet. I think we want to be really sure when we look at putting these words together. The idea of a metaverse, and we've really separated it now from that first one once Facebook came out and called themselves Meta. When you use the term meta, what it really means is meta is self-referential. Think of metadata. You've got metadata on this film. There's metadata on your email. So meta is self-referential. And when you talk about the metaverse, what you're really saying is it's not the universe, it's me. It's how I reference and how I work within the internet, within my area of expertise. I think the key to this is having a model. One of the concerns that I always have with people talking about the metaverse and blah, 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 whatever it is they use it to mean the web, the internet, and it isn't. When you look at the model, the model of this Web 3.0, which is on its way, parts of it are already here. That's the platform. Everything we do sits on, right now, let's say Web 3.0. The way I communicate in Web 3.0 is there's a transport mechanism. That transport mechanism is Wi-Fi, or it's 5G, or it's 6G. And then on top of that, the web and using the transport mechanism, so really two things. Applications sit there, and Facebook's an application. Facebook ain't the metaverse, and Facebook's never going to be the metaverse. LinkedIn, not the metaverse. It's an application that runs there. Metaverses that exist today are, one example is Steam games. And Steam games is a metaverse of user games. And it is set up so that you can use virtual reality, you can use augmented reality. That's a metaverse. Second Life for people who are gamers. Second Life Fortnite. That's a metaverse. People are setting up metaverses within different companies to have some kind of access into these special places. But I think what's key, Michael, is understanding that the metaverse is just something else that runs like an application on Web 3.0. It is not the end all of our technology. It's just another app.
Well, you speak of Web 3.0 as if it's something that exists and has been institutionalized for a very long time. Maybe you could help enlighten me and also our viewers about that. I was under the impression that Web 3.0 was a new vision for the internet that was decentralized around the blockchain in some way. Perhaps I'm wrong about that. Maybe you could explain what you mean by Web 3.0 and how that is a critical success factor or a unique platform for this metaverse.
Sure. I think the key to Web 3.0, and it's here now. There are pieces of it that are in existence. This isn't a throw a switch. It isn't all or nothing. There's parts of Web 3.0, and I think the most telling part of it right now is cryptocurrency. Web 3.0, one of the things that it allows or that it facilitates is blockchain, cryptocurrency, NFTs, non-fungible tokens. These are the types of things that are part of Web 3.0. Now, you can, in the beginnings of this 5 years ago, I set up wanted to see what blockchain was like. So we set up a blockchain. We set up got a small account for cryptocurrency. It was pennies then. It's dollars now, but still, it's a real crapshoot trying to use it. And blockchain was pretty hard to set up, but that all exists, and that's part and parcel of when you say something is Web 3.0. The way it's going to be used in a quote metaverse is I'm going to have cryptocurrency metaverses where I can put on my virtual reality goggles and I can walk in to what looks like a bank door, and I can buy some cryptocurrency. I can buy some Bitcoin, but I'm probably going to buy Ethereum. And the reason why I'm going to buy Ethereum is that today is the only blockchain that allows you to mint NFTs. You're starting to get down into the weeds when you talk about NFTs. Everybody thinks it's the crazy monkey or it's something else. NFTs are being used by a number of companies, law firms, to buy virtual land. They're using, that's an NFT. They've got a non-fungible token. All that token says is that when I give you an NFT, Michael, it means that you own the digital rights to that. So may not seem like much on, a barking monkey or whatever the one they use for the meme for that. What it means is I want to go in and I want to stake out this spot. Think of buying a URL. Think of getting the URL, your name on your website. And you may pay something for it to do that. Somebody else may already have the name, you buy it from them. Well, what happens now is I've got a spot in the virtual world. And an example for, I think most people who are listening to this will know who Snoop Dogg is. Snoop Dogg has got a metaverse that you can get into. You can see him, you can see people, you can hang with him, you can do all these other things in his metaverse. Well, somebody just paid $500,000 to get that part of the metaverse right next to Snoop Dogg's because they knew it would drag people in to what they were either going to sell or promote or something else. So it's really crazy. It's almost a cross between the Wild West and the Gold Rush.
So I think what you're saying is that, well, for one thing, you're saying that you need Ethereum to purchase NFTs, and NFTs get really straight to the root of the business model for the metaverse. That this is something where there is virtual real estate, there's going to be virtual IP, there's going to be virtual title searches, all the things that happen in the real world with ownership, to proof of ownership, for instance, are going to be handled by these NFTs, and therefore because these are cryptocurrencies fundamentally, they need the Web 3.0 in order to enable them. And I think that's the connection that you're making between Web 3.0 and the metaverse, is that the business model for the metaverse requires these NFTs, and therefore it requires a Web 3.0 base in order to function. I think that's what is that correct?
Yeah, it's really the other way around. Web 3.0 arises because I've got NFTs and cryptocurrency and blockchain.
Yeah. I see. So you're using Web 3.0 as in a figurative descriptive sense, as
Yep.
basically representing the next conceptual manifestation of the internet beyond Web 2.0. It is not a new internet. It is simply a new way of thinking about the internet, the same way that we used Web 2.0 to describe the explosion of social media, which essentially represented an entire new experience. And it had political and economic ramifications, and it deserved a name because it was and I think that's what you're saying. I get it now. Okay, I think I understand. So Web 3.0 was more of a figurative, descriptive milestone, similar to the Fourth Industrial Revolution. These are arbitrary, figurative, descriptive designations. Got it. Okay.
If I can be so cruel about it, they're PR. Many times they're PR constructs.
Yes, but they're useful. But they're useful, nevertheless.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's why I wanted to show that those layers, because that's the way we look at it with Web 3.0. And also, the bottom of all this, as we all know forever, is the hardware. And the Cisco doesn't have a Web 3.0, router, server, whatever. It's the same one. It's just what you're running on top of that hardware. So it truly is a construct that we as humans have put together, and as technologists we put it together. I use this model to explain and to look at when I'm at Capital Factory. I work with a number of entrepreneurs, and a lot of them are working in the realm of NFTs, and this is something that they're working with every day. And I see more people doing that than many cases the virtual reality people. It's more the folks who are doing it. I can give you an example of one. One of the companies that I work with is supporting Austin Pets Alive. They want to support getting pets adopted. So what they're doing is they're minting pictures of pets that are ready for adoption. They're going to put them out on the web and allow you to make a donation to buy a portion of that NFT. And when they went around and talked to people, especially millennials and younger, they think that's a great idea to do a donation. So you get to buy a piece of this pet who's going to eventually be adopted. You get a picture of them, and the Austin Pets Alive raises money. So it's an interesting construct, and so you're going to see more and more of these really strange things coming up that will eventually be successful.
It's very interesting that you're really focused on the NFT angle, because you could have a metaverse without NFTs. And in fact, most people, I know myself included, when we thought about the metaverse, all we thought of was an immersive virtual reality or augmented reality experience that is facilitated by the ability to have higher bandwidth, 5G, 6G, advances in AR, and also these Oculus headsets and things along those nature, that was actually what was driving this, and that it was simply an immersive experience. What the interesting angle that you are bringing in is you're saying, actually, no, I mean, the business value of the metaverse is being enabled by the NFTs, and that was driven by the rise of cryptocurrencies. And so that's really a very key component of what's driving this. I would never have thought of that. I would have thought, well, you could have a metaverse without the NFT angle, but once you introduce the NFT angle, you have an explosion of business opportunity, and but all this leads me to sort of wonder, why is it that, I mean, it seems like Facebook, by rebranding themselves as Meta, they're kind of staking a claim to a kind of a monopolistic interest in this. Surely they can't be the first tech company to have made progress in this direction. Are Apple or IBM or Google or any of the other larger players involved in the metaverse? And if they are we going to see a world of multiple metaverses? And do we have to be concerned about their interoperability, or will they all essentially be separate planets?
Well, let me add on first to your first question with the NFTs. You're going to see gaming is already moving in that direction. The concept in gaming for a long time, what they're trying to hook people into, is a play to earn. The game's Second Life has now been converted into that, where you have a contract to play the game, and that contract is on blockchain. And your contract and that secure contract allows you to play the game and earn cryptocurrency as you play the game. And the reason why they had to wait on that was because there are too many regulations on gambling. If you're going to put in what our currency today, if I was going to do it in dollars, I'd get arrested. If I do it in cryptocurrency, nobody cares because there's no rules against it. So that's kind of an extension onto that. Your second question is it only Google? If I can just, I did a little bit of research, and the one thing that I look at patents, and I kind of see how many patents are out there and for what. And we think the metaverse is this is the real thing that people must be new in patents. The top 10 in patents, US patents over the last 10 years for something that mentioned metaverse. Sony's got over 2,000. Microsoft's got over 2,000. Samsung, about 1,900. Now, Sony's got them because of their PlayStation VR, their virtual reality PlayStation. Microsoft's got them because of the Xbox. So they want to make sure that they are in the metaverse for this. Samsung, again, hardware. Google's got 1,400. Remember Google Glass. They're a big participant here. They've learned a lot. Facebook is the next in line with 1,400, but most of their patents are less than 5 years old. They're really moving out on the software patent area. Canon with hardware's got about 1,000. IBM, surprisingly, only has about 950. But IBM built its first metaverse in 2007, and they used it for virtual meetings. So this is, 2007 was a few years ago. It was before everybody had Zoom on their desktops. So IBM has been working quite a bit on this in the background. LG has got almost 1,000. Apple has 750, but Apple has got they've got an application kit, a development environment called ArcKit. And ArcKit is augmented reality kit. They've got over 14,000 applications for ArcKit in their app store for Apple. And then finally, Magic Leap has about 600. And I know what you're thinking right now is, who in the world is Magic Leap? Magic Leap has built an enterprise augmented reality platform. It's both hardware and software. It starts out at about $3,000, but that's $3,000 per headset. If you were to implement it, you'd have tens of them around your organization. But it really surprised me when I took a look at all the patents, because I thought it was a lot more restricted. I thought, even though Neil invented the name back in 1992, I thought for sure it would be fewer than this, but I was surprised at the volume of patents. So the metaverse is real. It's backed by patents, and it's backed by big business. I mean, these, IBM, although many people consider them yesterday's news, they're still building a lot of the supercomputers that are going to support the metaverse.
But getting to the second part of the question, though, maybe I'm conceptualizing this in the wrong way. Are these all private metaverses that are being created and incubated in these companies, or is there really is it like the internet, that it's just one landscape, interoperable landscape, or are there interoperability issues, or is it all connected the way the internet is?
I don't see any interoperability issues. I think it's just all connected. What you're going to end up with, the way Web 3.0 is going to arise out of this, out of the ashes of Internet 2.0, like the Phoenix, it's really going to be because I set up a metaverse for oil and gas inspection, and all you need to do is you need to have an Oculus VR, and you need to have an iPad. And then you can go out and you can sit in your office, but be doing that oil rig. Now you enter that through a URL in Web 3.0. And the reason why it's going to be in Web 3.0 is because I'm going to make sure when I put this out there that my contracts with people who are using it will be on blockchain. They'll be secured on blockchain, and there'll be blockchains, with, there'll be a contract with Exxon, or there'll be a contract with BP, there'll be a contract with Total. And those people, because there's the contract, they walk up to the door, and instead of knocking on the door to get into my metaverse of oil and gas equipment, they just plug in their contract number and walk through the door. So that's how that's going to work. It's the same. It's going to look the same way we work the internet now. I mean, I can get to any URL. I may not have access. I may need a password. But with 3.0, the password is going to be my blockchain contract.
Okay, I understand. I think I understand now. So, I mean, there's all kinds of reasons that people would want to create their own virtual meta space. In your case, I mean, I don't mean this to be an advertisement for Athens Group, but you do technology consulting for oil and gas companies. And so, I mean, I'm thinking right now, just off the top of my head, what you just described, a perfect business opportunity for you and your team would be to build private metaverses for your clients so that they can remotely walk inside their rigs, okay, and whatever it is they need to do remotely, and have a 3D experience instead of flying somebody out to a rig, which I'm sure is very time consuming and expensive. And so there's going to be private metaverses and there's going to be public metaverses, just like just like you said. But, in terms of the public at large and the consumers at large, all the people that run around with iPhones and which is everybody in the world, this would seem to be participation in this world would seem to be somewhat more capital intensive, because at the very minimum, it seems to require one of these expensive headsets. Now, I'm not sure what they go for, but it's not like having an iPhone. So is this going to be a playground at first, at least, for corporate America, both in terms of managing remote work and also doing the work, like you said, like creating private metaverses that serve some sort of purpose? Is that where we're going to see the initial phases of this until the cost of things like those headsets comes down? Because I don't see everybody going out and buying those headsets in order to participate in the metaverse.
Well, I think what we're going to see first is we're going to see it first in gaming, where people are going to be doing it more, and the gamers are going that way. Now, gaming is it's almost $100 billion a year industry just in the US. An Oculus costs about $300. But think not only the Oculus, think of the Wii. You remember the Wii, that when it came out, I forget who even made that, but they had the golfing, you could do golfing and other stuff. So if I'm going to do something like one of those games where I've got motion and I need to have a backdrop, my headset's going to cost about $300. That's kind of the bottom end of the headsets. That's what an Oculus goes for. But I then need to buy a sensor suite, and I have to put sensors. So I've got my game room with sensors. Sensors are going to cost about $100 or so. Now I'm into the Internet of Things. Now I've got my Internet of Things in my house set up so that I can have all these sensors and I can play the game wirelessly. And you're going to say, my goodness, that sounds terrible. My 13-year-old grandson, who for the last 2.5 years, has been at Google coding camps, building games. He built his first game when he was 11. He set that up in a weekend. Now, his father's he is an IT specialist, and together they could do that. But Jackson did most of it himself. 13 years old, he gave his dad the list of stuff to buy. He had it set up and running by Saturday night. So, and it was about, I think Matt said it was about $800 altogether, everything to get the games, all the other stuff. If I want an Xbox, I can get an Xbox and I can put a virtual reality headset connected to my Xbox. And now there's a number of Xbox games that I can use to go into that. So people are going to use it for that. The other thing that we're going to be using it for, people are going to use it for, is I'm going to be using it to do shopping. And I think after because of the pandemic, I think, I'm worried that some people are just sending me stuff from Amazon because I don't know where all this comes from, but I ordered it online. But, clothing's an issue. Some other things are an issue. I don't want to, I want to be able to see it. So I'll buy a VR headset so I can go clothing shopping or car shopping. When you start looking at people who are going to lose because of the metaverse, more and more brick and mortar has been clobbered badly enough, and brick and mortar is just going to get clobbered worse. So, there's the hints of the augmented reality, the hints of them with Warby Parker, where you can try on your glasses. You put a little app on your iPhone and you can try on any pair of glasses you want to see what it looks like. So those are the kinds of things. Carvana. I can shop for a new car on the Carvana website and literally look at it now. And if I had augmented reality or virtual reality, I could almost drive the car. So I think, Michael, people are going to want to. It's going to be an issue of once a lot of people get onto it, we're going to find that the most critical resource is going to be bandwidth. And what's going to start killing VR is going to be latency.
I was just going to ask that question, actually, which is, by the way, I'm surprised at how inexpensive those Oculus headsets are. Some people pay up to $1,000 for an iPhone. So I don't think that that's actually going to be a barrier to entry for the common user as opposed to the corporate user. But yeah, the bandwidth. Do we even have that type of capability to provide that high bandwidth and that low latency for virtual reality in general? Is the metaverse in any way contingent on a complete 5G rollout, or is the metaverse perhaps only contingent upon its success contingent upon a 6G rollout? What are the bandwidth requirements for this, and where are we at with that?
So I think as long as we're using wireless at home, and you've got, you're on Google Fiber, which most of us in Austin are, you're in good shape because you've got 1,000 megabytes. But if you're on something less than that, you're going to have problems. Maybe back to the physics of the virtual reality. One of the things that happens in the mid 90s, when I was at AMD, we were designing a new set of audio chips that are used in gaming. And one of the companies we worked with was a startup out of Rochester, New York. And guys came out of Rochester Institute. And they were building a virtual reality headset. So this is one of the first ones. And you have to have, when you build the chips for a virtual reality headset, you have to build accelerometers. Now, these accelerometers are, the size of a pin. But the older accelerometers were a little worse. And one of the things that happens, you'd put the virtual reality headset on, you'd start playing a game and you'd turn your head. As you turn your head, what has to happen is you have to have perfect alignment with your eyes. And the larger accelerometers would have a slight couple of microsecond lag. So, but you started to notice it. You notice you turned your head and it just took that time to go over. And eventually what happens then is you become nauseous and you can't play anymore because it does, your inner ear and everything else is just totally confused. So that's been fixed with the accelerometers. But what happens now is if you have a latency, and if you have a latency again measured in microseconds on your network, you're going to get that same effect, and it won't be useful. Mm-hmm. I don't see how people are going to be able to do that walking down the street with their iPhone with having enough bandwidth to do that. I mean, this is more bandwidth than it takes to stream a movie. This is a lot of bandwidth, and it has to be uninterruptible. So I think it's going to take. I think it can be done with 5G, but 5G is going to have to be rolled out a lot faster than it is, and it will probably drive things to 6G because of the latency is going to be a real issue in trying to keep virtual reality, augmented reality.
And what's your timeline for 6G being rolled out?
I think that we're not going to see it. We're not going to see it ubiquitously in the US for 10 years.
That's a long time.
It's a very long time.
So
But still the majority of VR and augmented reality is done at home, or it's done in an office environment. And I've got Wi-Fi, and I just throw another server at it. I don't have to worry about that.
Got it. So are we really going to require, is the metaverse truly going to be sensor heavy? Is our sensors a critical success factor for the metaverse, this IoT sensors, or can you have a metaverse without being sensor heavy?
Nope, gonna have to be sensor heavy, very sensor heavy. Because you think about it, you're gonna have to get the right type of tactile feel, you're gonna have to have gloves on. You have to have sensors for your fingers, so you can, as you reach in, you feel like you're really touching this silk scarf. Or so you need the sensors that hook up to the VR. You also, if you're literally walking through an area, you've got to have the sensors in those areas. I don't know whether you've seen that. There's a commercial out, I forgot what it's for, but all these people are standing around with the ping pong balls taped on their clothes, and they're playing the monsters and well, in order to have that type of virtual reality, if I'm going to play a game where I'm walking through something, there's got to be sensors that show where am I, how am I moving, how fast do I move, where am I standing. We use those sensors on industrial equipment all the time.
How can you do? How would you be able to do this at home? How would you be able to walk through a virtual mall?
Oh,
without bumping into the walls of your apartment. I mean, I
lay a tarp down with the sensors on it, and the sensors come get you. I download my program. What's the architecture look like? What does it look like? And it downloads to my sensor pad, and I walk through my sensor pad.
And you only need a two-dimensional surface for that.
Oh yeah, because the 3D, if it's too high for me to reach, then I'll pretend to get a ladder. But it's just 2D. It's an XY.
How do you compress space into a pad like that? Because if you're in a shopping mall, the size of a typical shopping mall, virtual shopping mall, that is, then you would have to compress all of that space. I mean, let's say you had I don't know what the square footage of a typical mall is, but let's say you had
hundreds of thousands of feet.
Let's say you had 100,000 square foot. Let's say most people live in a 2,000 square foot house. Okay. And let's say a small mall might be, let's just say a typical mall might be 200,000 square feet. That would be probably off. Okay. So how are you going to compress all of the real estate and offerings and products and walking experiences of a 200,000 square foot mall into a pad that can fit comfortably somewhere inside a 2,000 square foot house, which would be the experience that most consumers would be having?
So what I'm doing is I'm standing facing one direction, and I may be walking in place. And I can walk in place and look like I'm moving in that direction. I turn, walk in place some more until I get where I want to be.
Okay.
Turn again, walk through a door.
Okay, walking in place. Okay,
Yeah.
I didn't think of that. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Very interesting. So it is. So how far are we away? What's the timeline for this? I mean, there's issues. It doesn't sound like there's issues with bandwidth.
Nope.
It sounds like, I mean, we have, in terms of the NFTs, which may or may not be critical success factors of the metaverse. They certainly enable a lot of the business value, but we had that with blockchain, and we have that with crypto. Is IoT posing a constraint? Where are we seeing any constraints to the growth of this? And to where might the choke points be?
When you look at the where are some of the issues? I think bandwidth is one of the major ones. Once I get outside my house, outside the office, and then you're going to see some new types of businesses that are going to come up where when you walk in the door, you register and you get your virtual headset, and then you shop through the catalog through the virtual headset. blockchain.
You mean a kind of a hybrid approach where you still have to
Yep,
get in your car, you're driving to a store,
right.
but then you have an enhanced augmented reality
Yes.
experience
Mhm.
where you're physically somewhere but you're having an experience with these headsets that gives you more information.
Right.
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 Okay.
So think of a golf driving range.
Mhm.
You can make a golf driving range a lot smaller now. And you can walk in and look like and you can make it where you can use real golf balls. You can just make it that way. Think of an archery range. If those types of things, you're going to be able to do it. I think that NFTs and blockchain are not they're not a drawback. I don't have to have those to have augmented reality and virtual reality. I need those if I'm going to move into the play to earn, or I'm going to move into where I want ownership in some of this. I'm in Second Life and I built this marvelous mansion and I want to keep it. So now I need to pay something to keep that alive in Second Life. It's surprising in the early 2000s, my next door neighbor was an architect, and he was a big player in Second Life because they would do architectural work, and he did things in Morocco, Norway, all over the world, and he used Second Life as the medium for the prototype. And he didn't know anybody else, but some people start using that. But if I'm going to do that as a business, I want to keep those things. If I want to keep them, I got to buy them. Right. I have to buy them with cryptocurrency because that's how they're going to make the money. So I think these things are going to, I see them evolving today, Michael, in smaller ways. But I think the metaverse is here. The metaverse has been here. I think we have to look at how do we surround it. And then it goes back to, if you want to use it or you have an idea, how do you want to use it? And what is it that you want to do? And I think I hate to be boring about it, but it goes back to getting the requirements, figure out what it is that you want to do, and then you can do it. Architecting something using the metaverse and using virtual reality is not that difficult today. All the tools are there. I have to tell you that blockchain and using Ethereum is a flaming pain in the rear end. But once you've done it a couple of times, it becomes pretty easy to do. My concern over this is what's going to be a big problem is going to be security. I think cybersecurity is going to be an incredible issue because you will have more personal biometrics out there than anyone knows what to do with.
Well, I want to get to that in a second. I don't want to get right into the security risks because that is a big topic, but I want to go back to what you were saying just now. What my question was that you were leading into was what actual technical skills are going to be required by individuals to actually develop and build these virtual spaces. I mean, a lot of the people that are part of our community are technology professionals of all types, right? Mm-hmm. And these are the people whose working lives are going to be changed because these are the projects that they may or may not be asked to work on. Once this becomes a reality, what sort of skills are going to be required for developing these spaces, and how much of this might be just available, kind of open source, like off this, from the cloud, and how much of this is going to be rely on what's available from the cloud? Do you have any particular insight into that?
Well, I think that if you want to start building something today, build it on Apple and go download an AR kit. And so Apple's got lots of kits that you can use. There's lots of applications there. I haven't gone out and looked at what's out on out in open source, but I know there are thousands of open source virtual reality, augmented reality, blockchain, NFT minting solutions. All these are out there. I think that what we're going to have is what's going to have to lead this. We're going to have to get a new group of people leading the projects. It's going to have to be creative people. It's going to have to be people who are architects, who are artists. It's not the person who knows DevOps the best or can sling the best C#. It's going to be the person who can visualize how am I going to lay, how am I going to get the 200,000 square foot mall into my 300 square foot apartment? That's the type of creative thinking that's going to be needed. But under that, it's still the same blocking and tackling that we've been doing in software development since the beginning. It's understanding is having a good basis, doing things like make sure you've got DevOps for security, make sure you've got a good set of requirements, make sure you've got a good architecture, and understand all those layers. Because once you build a metaverse and let it loose, it's kind of not yours anymore. It's like handing the car keys to your teenager the first time. You know, that car will never be the same.
So who do you think, who's going to fail as a result of this? Who are the winners and losers going to be? I mean, this seems very disruptive. Who's going to benefit? Who's going to lose? What's your take?
Well, I think that we've seen who the winners and losers are going to be. They're the same ones who won or lost during the quarantine, because that's what's going to happen. It's the losers are the brick and mortar people who couldn't get stuff out the door virtually or in a delivery fashion. People who could move quickly and have pickup services, who could do other things. They're going to be the winners. I think some of the brick and mortar retail is going to be a loser. I think that there's going to be any entertainment that's not streaming is going to lose. If you don't have a streaming service, you're going to be out of luck. There are going to be very few. One of the things looking at entertainment right now, the big hitters are films like The Batman or anything of that Marvel Comics based or DC Comics based, where you need a big screen and you really get draw in a lot of people. The more arty films, the more family-oriented films, they're not going to, they may still be shown in some theaters, but they're only going to survive if they're streaming. I mean, the Hallmark Channel is an example of what we're going to see, and that's going to be a problem for them. I think that taxi cabs are going to finally go away. And it's all going to be an Uber-like environment. The gig economy is going to take over. I think it's just not going to be.
How does this, I don't understand the connection between the rise of the metaverse and the demise of the gig economy, and the rise of the metaverse and the demise of taxi drivers and the demise and the rise of the gig economy. What's the connection?
Oh, because everybody's online and they want to be able to do everything online, and they want to be able to get the best deal. And they want to, that's going to be part of it, because they're going to be used to doing that. I mean, we're fairly used to it now. I mean, I haven't, except at a couple of airports, I haven't taken a taxi cab in years. All over the world. We spent lots of time in France and England, and I never took a taxi cab.
Well, it's at least 30 to 40% less to take the Uber at times. It's a very easy decision to make. So what do you think Facebook's endgame is? Why did they make such a major investment in this? And why have they made so much noise about this if this has been going on quietly for a while now? What are they trying to accomplish, or where are they going with this?
Well, the one thing, there are a couple of things Facebook's trying to do, but one of the main things they're trying to do is to direct attention elsewhere. It's you're right in the middle of being grilled by somebody, and you have to say, look at the monkey in the room, to take the attention away from you. They're having a rough time with Congress, with the U.S. Congress. They are one of the companies that really got GDPR, the data rights provisioning in Europe, started. They are loathed and detested throughout Europe, throughout the judiciary in Europe, because of selling personal information. And so they're trying to take the attention away from them by doing this, and they're failing pretty miserably. They're not a metaverse. There's no way in the world that Facebook is going to be a metaverse. I mean, you're going to put on your VR goggles and walk through everything. I mean, if you want to know it'll be a metaverse, Tinder will be a metaverse. Mm-hmm. Any of those types of dating apps will be a metaverse, and so will a lot of other unsavory applications that'll be out there. But Facebook is really trying to get the heat pointed away from them because of what's happening, and they're I don't see them investing the same way Google's investing. I mean, Google is really making an investment in this and starting out with training people and supporting training and coding camps and things like that. Facebook's not quite there, and its business model is based on selling personal information. So unless they can figure out a way to get around things like GDPR and the California Data Privacy Act, they're going to be out of business because they won't be able to sell that information. Now, we can do it. We just went through that because of some of the work we're doing in Europe, where we're collecting personal information on people that we want to hire. And we're doing it online, so we had to go through conforming with GDPR. Easy to conform to, providing you tell them that you're not going to sell this information, you're only going to use it internally. Whereas the model for Facebook is, I want to take your information for free and then sell it. And that's not going to happen. The other thing I think is going to be interesting with the metaverse is advertising. You think of the advertising that comes up in Facebook and other social apps. It's going to be a different world for advertising. It's going to be more along the lines of television and movies, where you pay for ad placement. So if I'm one of the characters in the movie and it's in Europe, I may be drinking Coca-Cola, but if it's in Thailand, I may be drinking Pepsi.
That's very interesting. Never would have thought of that.
So those are, and that's going to be part of this metaverse. So the experience that you have seeing a movie might be different from the experience I have seeing the same movie, but it's not. It's been customized to my location and to my wants and needs that they may have discovered.
Are there any entrepreneurial sort of tech consulting companies that you're aware of that are just focused on building spaces for their clients? And that would seem like a great opportunity if the infrastructure is in place for this, if all the pieces are in place. Most people are so distracted with their business that they wouldn't be able to easily do this in-house. Are there any firms that you're aware of? And I don't want you to mention them specifically, but is this something that is a burgeoning, growing industry?
Surprisingly enough, not yet. And one of the other things that surprised me is that one of the areas where it is becoming where people are stepping up to do it are law firms who are specializing in digital property, in IP. There's law firms that are specializing in NFTs and blockchain, and they are building virtual reality environments for their clients with this. So that was one of the things that surprised me. I don't know of any right offhand that are doing it. I mean, of course, we looked into it at one time, and it wasn't, the tools weren't there. There wasn't enough interest within our client base within oil and gas. That was one of the issues. Now, there are some parts of oil and gas where it already is being done. And Shell, in their seismic center it had been in New Orleans, and they moved it to Houston. They've got a large square auditorium that's about 300 feet square, 300 feet on each side, with I don't know how many projectors up there. And they have the projector set up, and again, the sensors on where you are, and in both height and X, Y, Z coordinates, and they will model the seismic area of where you're going to drill. with all the size. So there's one of the Gulf of Mexico with those salt domes and everything else. You can go out there and walk through it, and you can point to an area, you can touch an area, and that'll expand. And they developed that 15 years ago. So there are companies that are doing it. They've probably gone to virtual reality goggles by now. I'm not sure of it, but I think it's an opportunity. I know where there are some people that are doing it is mostly for entertainment. The folks from Industrial Light and Magic have used a number of consulting firms out of Silicon Valley to do just these things. Plus, we've got the ability now basically to fab semiconductors on demand. And there are a number of custom bespoke semiconductor design companies where you tell them what you want and they'll look at whether or not they can do it, and then they'll fab it for you, and they can build 100 parts, 1,000 parts, however many parts you want, put them on a board, and you can go test your product.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, it is with all this bandwidth and processing with virtual reality, does this require advanced chips? I mean, are we talking about GPUs?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about the same. You're talking about. I haven't looked at one of the boards, but you've probably got about a fifth the number of chips that you do have in your iPhone are going to be on that virtual reality headgear. Also, you've got to have quite a bit of memory on them, and then you've got the trickiest part of doing semiconductors, having been associated with semiconductors throughout the 90s, is that analog to digital converters. Those A to D converters are the hardest things to get right. When you're talking about the Internet of Things, the world is analog to digital converters, because you've got all of these sensors that are out there that are basically analog sensors. And you'll get a digital signal back from them. And in many cases, we've had cases where we did work on in a whole sensor suite where we would get it back digital and we had to convert it back to analog and then use it that way, because the digital conversion wasn't fine enough on the chips they had. So
we're gonna have to do a whole nother session about semiconductor industry, about advanced chip design, about supply chain constraints, because I think I know personally, I know about the audience, there's nothing more interesting to me than that industry, and also where it's going. And all of the political and economic ramifications of these little chips, which are miracles, all of them.
It's about 2 days. 2 days, yes. Right.
That's a whole nother wonderful topic. For those of you who are curious, fortunately, we have Don on our side, and like I said, he's a polymath, and he knows a lot about a lot of things. And so we can always go back to Don for another session. But Don, I do have a closing question. We've covered so much territory, and I know I am a completely different person now than I was at the beginning of this interview in terms of my understanding, in a good way, in terms of my understanding of this topic. I have a much better understanding of it, and I know now what you meant by a lot of the things that you had put in some of your notes. But let's just close with something that maybe you could talk about, some of the unique risks from a cyber perspective. I know that's something that you're very concerned about. We didn't really touch on that much. I know we've done discussions in the past where we've talked about the Internet of Things, and you have a very jaundiced view about the Internet of Things in terms of not being worth the risks at all and a recipe for disaster. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are about Meta and cyber risk, and if it's worth the trade-off, and how we may be able to mitigate this going forward.
Sure. Let me start with a little story. Everybody's got USB data plug. They run my pen or somewhere else. I take them out, I plug them into my USB port, and I download data to them. And everybody knows that you've got to scan those, because as soon as you plug one of those USB data disks in, it could have malware on it or something else. Well, although we think those chips are all they're all memory chips, they're not. There's at the top of each one of the chips or down the side somewhere, there's a couple processor units on it. There's some outboard storage, and there's firmware on that knows what kind of USB did you plug into, what kind of computer do you have, what's the data format, all that stuff that we take for granted. There's a whole series of them that came out of China several years ago, where when you scanned it and scanned the memory, everything looked good. The malware was in the firmware, and the firmware that controlled the USB data stick had the malware in it and infected the computer. And there was no way to scan for it. You couldn't scan for it. So my concern is things like with the Internet of Things and also with virtual reality headsets and everything else, is that there are lots of processors in there, and we're going to buy from the lowest bidder. And as we found with some of our suppliers, not all of them have the best intentions in mind and allow for some monitoring software, some data capture software to go into their products. And that's the concern that I've got, is that we're going to have so many of these things out there, and we're going to have so many Internet of Things sensors attached to it, that all it's going to take is to have one of these be a bad actor. And if you think about what you've got in your houses, I mean, I think of if I hacked a home security system, or if I hacked one of the nice new doorbells that are out there. Well, what if I hacked that so it would tell me when the people were gone? So I would know the best time of the day to go rob their house because nobody's there. What if I decide that what I want to do is I want to find people who've got some type of medical issue that hasn't been reported, but I can take, if I have lots of sensors, if they have sensors on their head that let me take their blood pressure, and I can do pulse rate, and I can do eye movement, and think of everything you're capturing if you've got a virtual reality headset on. And what if I use that to send to the insurance companies so insurance companies can understand it's a pre-existing condition? I mean, there's all kinds of horrible things. When I put a virtual headset on, I am giving up an enormous amount of physical data. How well I can move. The Chinese government has done and is probably one of the best in the world at face recognition. But they found out that face recognition lags. And what they're trying to do now is the best way to capture who that person is by how they walk, the gait. Well, think of what you're capturing with a headset, with a virtual reality headset. If you're playing tennis, if you're, taking a stroll, if you're exercising. So these are some of the things that they don't keep me up at night, but they're risk areas. And I think that anybody who's going to go into using virtual reality, anyone who wants to walk into the metaverse, who hasn't already, needs to understand that they may be giving up more personal information than they want to.
I think the problem, though, is that we already live in a world where that's happening, and we are so accustomed to it, and signing off on long legal agreements that we never read. No. Whenever we use some app or download some app, we agree to things that we never read. Nobody ever reads that stuff, and that they might throw a few boilerplate legal documents out there and say, okay, we're good. They consented, but nobody reads it. So, I think that we're already deep into that. Not that makes it any better, but it's going to be hard to reverse the direction that the world's going in. People are willing, unfortunately, to concede their privacy for greater convenience.
That's right. It's true. And we're going to have to, that's one of the things that the GDPR, the European one, and the CDPR, the California version, do is they get rid of all the gobbledygook in a lot of these contracts, where they say, here's, the real key there is the right to be forgotten. So what GDPR provides for me is if I tell Google, get rid of all my data, they have to get rid of all the data. And then they have to be able to prove it. So, I mean, it's going to be hard. It's going to be years. It's probably going to be decades before that's ever taken care of. But it will eventually be done. I think that's, cybersecurity is always a concern. The other thing is just if you're doing fairly intense on a very fast Wi-Fi network, all you have to do is have a part of the app get downloaded back into your network. You're gonna have to have lots of access to that network because you're going to need the bandwidth. So you're always going to have that possibility that you could have some malware on the device that you're using that then infects your network in your office or your home.
Don, it was so great having you today. We've covered so much ground. I really appreciate the time, and I hope that you'll come back and join us again for another long form discussion about many other topics. Hope to see you again in the future. Any closing remarks for our friends and our audience out there?
I think just keep in mind that the metaverse is here and you're probably in it right now.
All right. Thanks so much. But Don, yeah, have a nice day. Take care.
You too. Thank you, Michael.